Chapter 1. The Woman on the Road. The evening sun bled across the horizon, painting the prairie in streaks of gold and rust. The wind carried the dry scent of sagebrush, whispering over the barbed wire fences that marked the edge of Cole Maddox's lonely ranch. His horse stamped restlessly beside him as he tightened the last fence post of the day, sweat and dust clinging to his shirt. That's when he saw her. At first, she looked like a shadow stumbling against the light. Too thin, too unsteady to be a ranch hand or a traveler who knew the land. The closer she came, the more details sharpened in his wary eyes. Torn dress mud-caked him, skin pale beneath layers of dirt. Her steps faltered, arms dangling like she'd given up carrying her own weight. Please, the word rasped from her lips, barely more than a sigh of wind. No more pain. Then she crumpled against a wire fence, her body folding like a rag doll. Cole's gut tightened. He'd seen his share of hardship on these plains. Men dying of thirst, cattle torn apart by wolves. But there was something in the way this woman whispered that plea that clawed straight through his chest. He swung down from his saddle and knelt beside her, careful as if she might shatter at his touch. Her skin burned with fever. Sweat plastered strands of hair to her face, and beneath the grime, he caught the faint trace of bruises blooming dark against her cheekbone. Whoever she was, trouble had carved its mark deep into her. "Ma'am." His voice came low, steady, the same tone he used to soothe a spooked horse. "Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. A soft moan escaped, but no words followed. Cole cursed under his breath and glanced toward the empty road. No riders, no wagons, just a long stretch of dust and silence. Whatever she'd been running from, she was alone now. He slipped his arms beneath her slight frame, lifting her against his chest. She weighed hardly more than a sack of feed. His horse snorted as he carried her to the saddle, adjusting so she rested against him when he climbed up. The ride back to the ranch felt heavier than any cattle drive. Coyotes yipped in the distance, their calls echoing to the fading light. Cole tightened his grip on the reins, jaw set hard. He didn't know her name nor the story behind those haunted eyes, but as the ranch house came into view, lantern light flickering in the windows, one thing burned clear in his mind. Whoever had broken, this woman would not set foot on his land. Not while he still drew breath. Chapter 2. Shadows in Her Eyes. The wooden floorboards creaked under Cole's boots as he carried the unconscious woman into the dim ranch house. The place was plain and weathered, rough-hewn beams, a single lantern casting long shadows across the walls. But it was steady, safe. He laid her gently on the cot in the corner, pulling a quilt from the cedar chest and tucking it over her trembling frame. All through the night, the coyotes sang outside, and the wind rattled the shutters like restless spirits. Cole sat in a chair by the bed, arms crossed, hat tipped low, watching her chest rise and fall. He hadn't meant to care. Hell, caring only brought grief, but something about her had already hooked deep. By dawn, she stirred. Her eyes opened, startlingly green beneath the fever haze, and darted around the room as though searching for escape. When she saw him, her body tense, hands clutching the quilt like a shield. "You're safe?" Cole said, voice quiet but firm. "Ain't nobody here but me. Name's Cole Maddox. This is my ranch." She licked her cracked lips, as though the words themselves hurt to form. "Eliza," she whispered. Cole nodded. "Eliza, then. You were half dead out there on the road. I brought you in." Her gaze flicked to the door, then to the windows, then back to him, measuring distance, searching for threats. Every movement carried the weight of fear. Even when he handed her a tin cup of water, her fingers shook so hard she spilled half of it down her chin. Cole turned away, giving her space. He busied himself stoking the fire, the smell of strong coffee and frying bacon slowly filling the cabin. "Eat if you can," he said over his shoulder. It'll put strength back in you. Eliza's eyes softened for a breath, then clouded again. She reached for the food, but the sleeve of her dress slipped, revealing dark bruises circling her wrist. Cole froze mid-motion. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. The silence between them told him more than words. When she noticed his stare, she yanked the fabric back down, shrinking it on herself. "Please," she whispered, voice breaking. "Don't ask me. Not yet." Cole's jaw tightened, but he only nodded. "Fair enough. You don't owe me a thing." The fire popped, throwing sparks into the dim room. For a long while, the only sound was the crackle of flames and the low whistle of prairie wind through the boards. Eliza sat there, shadows clinging to her like a second skin. But for the first time in God knew how long, someone hadn't demanded, threatened, or struck. Instead, she found a man who simply gave her space. And in that silence, a fragile seed of trust took root. Chapter 3, Whiskey and Whispers. The town of Red Bluff was never truly quiet. Even in the heat of the day, the saloon's swinging doors creaked with traffic. Spurs clinked against the boardwalk, and the air buzzed with the smell of whiskey, sweat, and tobacco smoke. Cole Maddox sat at the end of the bar, hat pulled low, nursing a glass of rye. He wasn't much for talk, but when a man ran cattle this far out, he had to keep an ear on the gossip. That day, the gossip had a bite to it. Word is, a miner slurred from 2 stools down. "Devil Cain's looking for a woman," says she run off. "Devil don't let things go easy," another man muttered, his voice lowering. "He'll burn half the county to ash, for he's through." Cole's hand stilled around his glass. Devil Cain. He hadn't heard the name in years, but it coiled through his gut like barbed wire. If the rumors were true, then the woman lying in his ranch house, Eliza, was no random wanderer. He drained the whiskey, set the glass down, and left without a word. Back at the ranch, the sun was sinking, painting the horizon red. Eliza sat on the porch, her thin hands folded in her lap, eyes tracking every shadow like they carried knives. Cole dismounted slow, tying off his horse before walking up the steps. "You heard something in town," she said softly, reading the tightness in his face. He studied her for a moment. Cain's men are sniffing around. "Folks say he's hunting someone." Her shoulders stiffened, and for a long time she didn't breathe. Then, with a trembling exhale, she whispered, "Me." Cole leaned against the porch rail, arms folded, waiting. Her voice cracked like glass as she went on. "He kept me. Years, maybe. I lost count. Said I belonged to him. When I tried to run, he marked me." She tugged her sleeve back, showing the ugly scar branded into her wrist. Her eyes glistened in the fading light. "I thought I'd die out there before I let him drag me back." The prairie wind picked up, rattling the dry grass, carrying the faint howl of a coyote. Cole's jaw worked, but he said nothing at first. Instead, he reached into his coat and drew a cigarette, striking a match against the post. The flame flickered between them, sharp and brief, before he spoke. "You ain't going back," he said flatly. "Not while I'm still standing." Eliza's breath hitched, her eyes meeting his. For the first time, something besides fear flickered there. Something fragile, like hope daring to breathe. Chapter 4, The Storm Rises. Morning sunlight spilled across the Maddox ranch, painting the corral in dusty gold. Horses snorted and stomped, their breaths steaming in the cool dawn. Cole leaned against the fence, watching Eliza with narrowed eyes as she sat nervously in the saddle. "Keep your heels down," he said, voice even. "Rein steady. The horse knows more than you think. Just needs to believe you ain't afraid." Eliza's hands trembled on the leather, but she swallowed hard and straightened her back. I'm trying. Try less. Trust more." She exhaled shakily, then gave the mare a gentle nudge. The horse moved forward, hoofs crunching over dry dirt. Eliza swayed, gripping tight, until Cole stepped into the ring, his hand brushing her knee. The touch grounded her. She steadied, shoulders loosening. For the first time since she'd arrived, a faint smile ghosted her lips. "That's it," Cole murmured. "You ain't helpless, Eliza. Don't let him make you think you are." The words lingered, heavier than the morning air. She looked down at him, eyes shining with unshed tears. "No one's ever said that to me." Cole dropped his hand, stepping back, the distance between them deliberate. Feelings were dangerous, and he knew it. But as the mare carried her in slow circles, the way her gaze clung to him told him the truth was already taking root. By afternoon, they worked with the rifle. The crack of gunfire echoed across the valley, the acrid tang of powder hanging in the breeze. At first, Eliza flinched with every shot, but Cole's patience held steady. His large hands closed over hers, guiding her aim. Together they squeezed the trigger, sending a tin can tumbling from the fence post. Her laugh startled them both. Soft, broken, but real. Then the sky darkened. Cole's neighbor rode hard into the yard, horse lathered with sweat. "Maddox," he shouted, eyes wide. "Cain's men came through my place last night, torched my barn, slaughtered 2 steers. Left a mark on the fence, a devil's brand." Eliza went pale, lips parting as if she couldn't breathe. Cole's fist clenched at his sides, the muscles in his jaw jumping. "They're making their way here." "I should leave," Eliza whispered, voice thin as smoke. "If I stay, they'll bring death to your door. I won't have you suffer for me." Cole stepped close, his shadow falling over her, his voice low and hard. "Don't you say that again. You ain't Cain's to claim, and I'll be damned for I let him take another soul." For a moment, silence stretched, just the rustle of wind, the restless shift of horses. Then Eliza reached out, fingertips grazing his sleeve. Her touch was light, but the promise in it was fierce. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was standing with him. Chapter 5, Blood on the Horizon. The sun bled into the horizon like a wound, turning the sky a deep, fiery red. Dust rose in clouds across the prairie, carrying the thunder of hooves. Cole stood at the edge of the corral, rifle slung across his shoulder, watching the gang crest the ridge. There were near a dozen riders, silhouettes black against the dying light. At their center rode Cain, the devil himself, broad-shouldered, black coat whipping in the wind, a cruel grin flashing like a knife. Eliza stood on the porch, her knuckles white against the post. "Cole," her voice shook. He turned just enough to meet her eyes. "Get inside. Bolt the door." But she shook her head. "No, I won't run anymore." The gang fanned out as they neared, horses snorting, iron flashing at their hips. Cain dismounted slow, boots crunching on dry earth. He spread his arms wide, mockery dripping from every word. "Cole Maddox," he drawled. "Always figured you for a man who kept his own. Now I hear you got something of mine." Cole stepped forward, rifle steady. "She ain't yours, Cain." Cain's grin hardened. "Everything I touch is mine. You know that." Gunfire cracked before words could settle. Cain's men drew fast, bullets whistling through the dusk. Cole dropped behind a trough, firing back in measured bursts. With splintered, horses screamed, the ranch alive with chaos. Eliza ducked low by the doorway, but when she saw Cole pinned, instinct took hold. She grabbed the rifle he'd left leaning by the porch. Her hands trembled, but she raised it, braced against her shoulder the way he'd taught her. A shot rang out. One of Cain's men toppled from his horse. Eliza gasped, chest heaving, but when another outlaw charged, she fired again. This time the bullet kicked up dirt at his feet, enough to send him veering away. Cole's eyes cut to her between volleys. pride and fear warring in his face. "Good girl. Stay low." The battle raged, smoke stinging the air, until at last the dust cleared enough for Cole to see Cain standing at the center, pistol raised, grin wide. "You always were stubborn, Maddox." Cain sneered. "Let's finish it proper." Cole rose from cover, rifle slung aside, revolver drawn. The world seemed to narrow, the gang shouting, Eliza cry his name, the prairie wind howling, but none of it mattered. Just Cain, the devil in the flesh, and the promise Cole had made. The two men faced each other in the last light of day, shadows long, hands hovering over their guns. Then silence broke beneath the sharp report of a single shot, and both knew the storm was coming. Chapter 6, A New Dawn. The shot cracked through the air, echoing across the open plain. For a breathless moment, no one moved. Dust drifted like smoke in the dying light. Then Cain staggered back, his grin faltering into a twisted snarl. A red bloom spread across his chest before he dropped to his knees, pistol slipping from his fingers. Cole stood steady, revolver still smoking, his breath harsh in the silence. His shoulder burned where a bullet had grazed him, but he hardly felt it. He only kept his eyes locked on Cain as the outlaw fell face first into the dirt, the weight of his cruelty thudding against the earth. The devil was dead. Cain's men, what few remained, looked at one another, hesitation breaking their fury. One spat into the dirt, turned his horse, and rode off into the gathering night. The others followed, retreating like shadows. Within moments, the ranch was quiet but for crackle of fire on splintered wood and the ragged sound of Cole's breathing. "Cole!" Eliza's voice pierced through the haze. She ran from the porch, skirts gathering dust as she stumbled to him, her hands pressed against his side where blood seeped through his shirt. "You're hurt," she whispered, tears streaking down her dirt-stained cheeks. "Just a scratch," he muttered, though his knees nearly buckled. Still, he found the strength to rest a hand against her trembling back. "You did good, Eliza. You fought." Her lips parted, disbelief in her eyes. "I never thought I could not until you." Cole looked at her then, not as the broken woman he'd found on the road, but as a firebrand who'd stood her ground beside him, who'd faced the devil and refused to break again. In her eyes, he saw something he hadn't dared let himself feel in years. Hope. The first pale light of dawn began to creep across the horizon, chasing away the night. The ranch bore scars, bullet holes in the posts, smoke curling from the barn. But the land felt lighter, as if the devil's shadow had finally been lifted. Eliza's hand slipped into his, fingers interlacing, and she leaned her forehead against his chest. "You gave me more than shelter, Cole. You gave me back myself." His throat tightened, words slow and raw. "And you gave me something I thought was gone for good." He tilted her chin up gently, eyes locked on hers. A reason to live again. The dawn broke full, bathing them in gold. Cole and Eliza stood together on the porch, scarred but unbroken, their hands entwined. The devil had been defeated, the past laid to rest. What lay ahead was uncertain, but for the first time it was theirs to choose. And as the coyotes sang faintly in the distance, they faced a new day side by side, no longer alone. The sun melted into the horizon, casting the plains in shades of copper and rose. Smoke still lingered from the gunfight, curling faintly above the ranch, but the land was quiet now. No hoofbeats, no gunfire, only the restless cry of coyotes carried on the wind. Cole stood at the fence line, his arm bandaged, eyes scanning the open prairie as if expecting more shadows to ride in. But none came. The devil was gone, and with him, the fear that had haunted Eliza's every step. She joined him, skirts brushing the dust, her face pale but steady. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was alive, threaded with possibility. Eliza's hand slipped into his, small but strong. "You didn't just fight for me, Cole," she said softly. Her voice trembled, but her gaze was clear. "You showed me I was worth fighting for." He turned to her, jaw tight with unspoken feeling. "You are, always were." He hesitated, then let the walls drop, his voice raw in the fading light. "I thought my heart was buried with the past, but damned if you didn't bring it back to life." Her eyes glistened, and a tear caught the last rays of sun like a shard of fire. "Then let's live, Cole. No more running. No more chains. Just us, this land, this sky, and tomorrow." He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers, as the prairie stretched endless before them. "Tomorrow," he whispered, and kissed her as the world turned to gold.